Good morning, Arthur Rafferty, ASNI-TV. This morning I would like to speak to you about a group I run called the Arthur Rafferty Foundation. It's a victims group to help those who have been murdered in this sham of a war here in Northern Ireland. Once again, I have been let down by a so-called organisation that is supposed to help the families of people who have been brutally murdered in a war. That is the War Crimes Commission. Now, my father was murdered by Sinn Féin ARA, who are affiliated to the British Crown and who were at war in Northern Ireland at the time. I reported my father's case to the War Crimes Commission in the Hague in the Netherlands to the International Criminal Court. That was over 2 years ago. I was advised to go to the War Crimes Commission by a human rights lawyer firm in London that I have been in contact with, after I was let down by the so-called powers that be for the past 40 years here in Northern Ireland. My father was brutally murdered by a Sinn Féin ARA informer called Freddie Scappaticci. The Sinn Féin ARA were at war in Northern Ireland at that time. The man who murdered my father, Scappaticci, worked for the British government as an agent, was an informer for the British Army, a group called the FRU, that is the Forces Research Unit. He was their top informer and had to answer to them. He also was an informer for the RUCPSNI and also the Special Branch. Now that corrupt, discredited RUCPSNI have known for the past 40 years who murdered my father, but have hid and covered up to protect their informer, and of course the British government knew all about the murder, as the RUCPSNI work for the British Crown. Now, I have went to the Human Rights Commission in Belfast asking for their help. After about a year of meetings and talks, the outcome was that nothing ever happened and that nothing was ever going to happen. A total waste of my time. But of course, they are paid by the British Crown and they have to obey them. I then went to Amnesty International, run by a person called Patrick Corrigan. His advice to me was to go to the Pat Finnegan Centre, to the Relatives for Justice, and to the Community Restorative Justice. All three groups are run by Sinn Féin ARA, the very group of scum who murdered my father. So Patrick Corrigan and his pro-Sinn Féin ARA Amnesty International was a total waste of time, but of course he is also funded by the British Crown. I then went to Equality Commission, and after months of talking, I knew that nothing was ever going to happen. It was a total waste of time and of course funded by the British government. There are other groups I tried, and after many meetings and talks I knew I was only wasting my time, as they once again are all paid and funded by the British Crown and they have to stay in line. Now, I approached many MPs and MLAs and MEPs, but there again no one wanted to step out of line to offend the British Crown, who are their paymasters. These are just some of the corrupt people that I have met in my quest for justice into the brutal murder of my father, Arthur Joseph Rafferty, in 1974. I could fill a book of the names of groups and people that I have met, but I will not waste my time talking about them. Now, after all that time, the War Crimes Commission have finally made their minds up that my father's murder was not a war crime. My father was murdered by a Sinn Féin ARA informer who worked for the British Crown, who were at war with Sinn Féin ARA at the time in Northern Ireland. So how can Mr. Dillon of the War Crimes Commission say that my father's murder was not a war crime. But of course, if you count how many British soldiers, how many RUC PSNI officers, and how many Sinn Féin ARA members, and you count how many innocent people, men, women and children that those three groups have murdered with their shoot to kill policy, with their no warning bombs, men and women and children blew to pieces, and count how many of those British Army, RUC PSNI and Sinn Féin ARA terrorists have been charged with war crimes, well, I can tell you offhand, it is not one. Not one. Then you get Tony Blair and the British government getting involved in 2 illegal wars on the word of lies, dropping indiscriminate bombs on Iraq and Afghanistan, killing many hundreds of thousands of innocent men, women and children. Many were blew to pieces. Yet I see that the War Crimes Commission has not charged not one with war crimes. That mass murderer Tony Blair has now been made a peace envoy and has now become a Roman Catholic and has had a meeting with the Pope. Surely that is wrong for a man of God to meet a man with so many murders on his hands. Blair and the whole British government who started the wars should be arrested and charged with war crimes. Also the Queen. After all, it was her British Army who were involved in both these wars as well as in Northern Ireland, where hundreds of thousands of innocent men, women and children died. And yet Mr. Dillon of the War Crimes Commission has not arrested anyone. You have to ask yourself why. I have wrote to this Mr. Dillon 4 months ago to have a meeting with him to discuss my father's case, and that I will pay my own flight over to see him and my own flight back. But so far this elusive Mr. Dillon has not replied to me. It seems to me that anyone who belongs to Britain and is guilty of mass murder or war crimes, such as the British Army, the RUC PSNI and also Sinn Féin ARA, are affiliated to the British crime, can't get away with murdering innocent men, women and children in their illegal wars. Now, I have come to the conclusion that the War Crimes Commission, as I have been told by very senior legal people and very senior civil servants, they are run by Whitehall and the MI5 and MI6. And as to that, I have no doubts. I will be meeting my human rights legal team in London very soon to prepare a case against the War Crimes Commission. I find they are run by the British Crown, and to let the public know what type of scum they are. And if it is in my power, I will have those people who were involved in mass murder, also war crimes, be brought to stand trial for their crimes against humanity. That includes the British government, the War Crimes Commission, the British Army, the RUC PSNI and of course Sinn Féin ARA. After all, those innocent men, women and children who were murdered by these groups deserve justice. Someone has to stand up and speak for them, and the Arthur Rafferty Foundation has taken on their fight for justice. It has taken me over 40 years to get here, and I will make sure that Scappaticci and his British and RUC PSNI scum friends stand trial for their war crimes. I told my father on his deathbed that I would sort his case out, and if it means taking on the British government, the War Crimes Commission, the corrupt RUC PSNI and Sinn Féin ARA, I say to them all, bring it on. And the Arthur Rafferty Foundation will sort this matter out once and for all, as my group receives no funding from any British government. Anyone who would like a tip of this story or any one of my stories can call me on my mobile 07715 921137. Leave your name and address and I will send you a tip free. Thank you. Now, anyone who has a story to tell and wishes me to air it can call me on my mobile 07715 921137, or I can send out a reporter to get your story. And remember, I will tell your story as you tell me. Nothing will be cut out. Now watch more of my stories on YouTube. YouTube Arthur Rafferty, Arthur Rafferty Docker, YouTube Jackspot 2012. That is a tip about the brutal murder of my father by a 5-man gang of Sinn Féin IRA, all paid informers, led by Freddie Scappaticci on the orders of the British government, the RUC PSNI and the Special Branch. This assassin Scappaticci carried out their orders on their command. Now my email is arthurrafferty1@gmail.com. Thank you for watching ASNI TV and good morning, and I will see you soon.